Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your professor today as we look at Flair's Olympic Dream Team cards. These cards were made basically from 1993 through 1996 to mark the 2 years that they were involved with the U.S. Olympic teams, both for the Olympics and for the World Championships. Now, the original Dream Team was a team that really didn't need much marketing at all. It was that team that everybody talks about that, oh, one day wouldn't this be amazing? And it was actually, it actually happened. And they played meaningful games as the games could possibly have been. The excitement about that original Dream Team came primarily from the idea that, well, if pro players are ever able to compete in the Olympics, it's going to be an amazing thing to see. And once pro players were permitted to play basketball in the Olympics, the idea was, okay, well now the United States is always going to be dominating the Olympic stage in basketball games, and hockey would be the one place where you'd really be able to see some good competition. So the idea of a gold medal for the U.S. team in basketball was a foregone conclusion, and the excitement wasn't about whether the team would make it, but by just seeing these, not even an all-star team, it was an all-pro team that was going to be playing. And the idea that every 4 years the team would come back together and play, initially that felt like a really, really amazing thing that would never get old. The reality was the original Dream Team was the kind of thing that you really couldn't replace, even though on paper it should have been the case, because these were all players who were actively playing in the league. Granted, 2 of them were at retirement, but still, the idea that there are always going to be star players of a world-class caliber at any given time meant that you would pretty much expect that this team gathered together for the Olympics every single year would be an amazing experience regardless. So 2 years after the Olympics came the World Championship. And the World Championship is kind of like the Olympics without the actual Olympics part. So for the Basketball World Championship game, they were playing for a gold medal and they were playing against all the other teams in the world. But it wasn't actually the Olympics. So because it wasn't actually the Olympics, it was seen as cool, but it didn't have the meaning. And right from the beginning, when they began to put together the roster, you noticed a lot of names missing. Like pretty much all the names you would expect to see on there were missing. The team was like a second team compared to the original Dream Team. That's not a knock on these players. Some of these players were truly phenomenal players, but there were many players on this roster that they weren't continual all-stars. They weren't annual all-star players. And a few of the players you look and you just have to think, why in the world is that guy on the team? But the big stars didn't need to be on the team. They'd won their gold medal, and if they wanted to win a gold medal, why would they worry about a World Championship rather than the Olympics? So the team always felt kind of second rate. And the name Dream Team too was pretty much always seen as not necessarily a joke as much as a very optimistic term for the team. But the gold medal was still guaranteed. So Skybox and Impel had been the card companies that had shown the original 92 team. By the time 94 came around, basically all 3 major manufacturers of basketball cards got involved. So Flair, Upper Deck, and Skybox all made them. Topps did not, but we had enough with 3 sets as it was. Flair got the jump start on everybody else because they used their opportunity to make cards for the Dream Team 2 by including them in their 93-94 Ultra set. And it was a bunch of cards thrown in at the end of Series 2, and you got to see all the players in their Olympic uniforms on a horizontal card with a beautiful flag on the back. And the cards are probably, I think they're the best looking cards made for the Olympics, whether it's the Olympics or the World Championships. They also did a wrapper giveaway, which Ultra liked to do during that time. Usually it was for a highlight set for a player that was done as an insert set, and this would just add a few more cards to that. Well, in the case of Series 2 for 93 Ultra, they added a couple of players who hadn't been included in the main set and a checklist. Now the checklist is really just a team card, and on the back it's a checklist of who all the players are on the front of the card. So the back of the card is the checklist for the front of the card, but it's still a really, really nice card. For their actual USA basketball team set, they didn't go with Ultra. They actually went with Flair. Now Flair was was a set that was released in baseball, but it hadn't been released in basketball yet, and 94 was going to be, or 94-95 was going to be the year that they were going to launch it. So this was almost like a preliminary set, a teaser set for the set they would eventually release. And the Flair set came out really well. It was 8 cards of each player. It was a set with 15 8-card groupings, starting with 8 cards of the 4 coaches, and then 8 cards for each of the 13 players, and then an additional 8 cards at the end for female basketball players and 2 checklists. And the female basketball players and Pat Summitt, as well as a coach, made it look like a whole women's team alongside the men's. But these were an interesting collection of women's basketball players, including one of the few Ann Meyer cards and one of the few Pat Summitt cards. The checklist at the end of the cards is a horizontally oriented checklist, and it looks like a big team photo, again with a flag on the back, when you combine the two together. But it's a bunch of photoshopped pictures of all of the players lined up. And they made another giveaway, and in this one, it was for the 14th player, the one player who had not been included in the set, who was a late addition, who was Kevin Johnson. And the Kevin Johnson send-away was for 10 cards. You got the 8 cards with Kevin, and you got an additional 2 cards, which was the adjusted checklist. And the checklist is different from the original checklist in the set, because on the back it actually includes enough room for all the Kevin Johnson cards, which look like an insert set, to be included. So it shifts all the names. And instead of Reggie Miller being the name that bridges from one card to the other, now it's Alonzo Mourning. They also inserted Kevin on the front of the card, and they had to shift everybody over for that to happen. Now, the way that you can tell the original cards from these insert cards are in 3 ways. One, as I said, the original cards have Reggie Miller spilling from one checklist to another. In the later ones, it is Alonzo Mourning. The second way is if you look at Dan Marley, who's standing next to Derek Coleman. In the original cards, Dan Marley actually cuts across from one to the other. The card cuts through basically his leg. In the adjusted one, when they shifted everybody over for Kevin, that creates the break directly between Dan Marley and Derek Coleman. The third way that you can tell is the orientation of the front of the card to the back of the card. So in the original set, the cards, if you flip them horizontally, that's how you go from straight up to straight up, front to back. But on the Kevin Johnson insert sets, they actually flip the back around so that you rotate it vertically. So the backs of the cards are on either side. Any one of the ways can tell. Obviously, one of the cards is a lot easier because it has Kevin on the front and it has Kevin on the back, but the other one you can also tell as well. Now, in the set, it's built on 8 cards per player, which can be kind of frustrating if you're using 9-card sheets. The set includes 7 pictures of each player in their regular NBA uniforms, and then one with kind of beams of light behind them showing them in their USA team jersey. Now, if you want to have 9 per page, fear not, because when the 94-95 Flair set was released, they also had the players in their game jerseys in action shots, so they actually look like they're a part of the regular Flair set. And if you add that to your USA team set, you can get 9 per page, and you can actually line everything up so that the set looks great. In 1996, the Olympics came back, for us quite literally. And with that came a lot of the star players from the previous Dream Team. So a few of the Dream Team players, like David Robinson, Scottie Pippen, Karl Malone, and John Stockton, returned to the USA team, and so did some of the players from the 94 Worlds team. This really would have been Dream Team 2 if they had been patient with the terminology. And with this came a much more exciting team and more exciting venue. Fleer, once again, was one of the 3 companies that made cards for this year. Topps finally got an opportunity to participate, but in their case, they actually covered the women's basketball team, which was in many ways kind of an advantage for them overall in the long run. So for Fleer, they again decided to kind of jump the gun and to include something in one of their sets. Again, it was the Ultra set, but instead of including it in the Series 2 cards in the set, they made an insert set of 10 cards of the initial players who were going to be on the team. And these are nice cards, and because they're an insert set, the cards hold up a little bit better. They stand out a little bit better as a unified mini set. And likewise, when they did their actual Olympic team set, they did not continue with Ultra. This time they went with Flair. And some of the cards do actually fit with Flair, but most of the cards feel more like Flair cards than Flair cards. The set is a 50 card set. It's broken into 5 groupings of, again, the original 10 players who were chosen, and they use regular card stock for the second and the fourth of their 5 themes. And for the other 3 themes, they use lenticular card design, which some people refer to as 3-dimensional. Sometimes it's used to make a 3D quality. Sometimes it's used to make a flip book, a back and forth between 2 images. And for these pictures, they use the 3D-esque quality of the lenticular design. The first and the third sections, the first 2 of the lenticular cards, show the players in their regular NBA jerseys, and then the other 3 show them in their USA jerseys. The card designs all look very different one to another, kind of a haphazard look, not quite as crazy as UD3, but still there's no consistency between them. And because it's a 10 card, 10 card, 10 card, 10 card, 10 card setup, the players keep showing up the same numbers. So in the case of Scottie Pippen, his card number is 7, 17, 27, 37, and 47. They also had an insert set, their hero set, and it's also 10 cards, and the player shows up the same number. Again, Scottie Pippen is number 7. And in this one, it's a regular card stock, but it's actually die cut, which was something they did with some of their Flair sets. And the die cutting is meant to take the flag design and make it look like a waving flag behind the player. They're really nice cards. The set is kind of a crazy set. It looks nice at times, and it looks kind of hokey at times, I think. But the hero set does look great. And they did another giveaway, and this one was for the 2 players who got added later on, who were Sir Charles Barkley and Mitch Richmond. And it's a full 12 card set, so 6 of each, the 5 main set cards and the heroes card for each player. And the numbers are not seeded into the main set like had been the case with Kevin Johnson. They stood on their own. There were no checklists with this set. There were no women's basketball players with this set. It was just a straightforward set with a straightforward insert. Now, since there's not as much to talk about with these cards as there will be with Skybox and Upper Deck, I want to also talk about one other set that was released in 1996, and that was the ProMag card set by Chris Martin Enterprises. Now, Chris Martin Enterprises was a company that was created by a football player from the Kansas City Chiefs named Chris Martin. And he made a whole bunch of different sets that were based more on exciting things for kids. They're things that double as cards. As opposed to making just a card that's a card, these were things that could also be cards. And ProMag was a magnet. And the set of ProMag had been done he'd done some basketball, he'd done a lot of football, he'd done some baseball, and he did this special set of Olympic team cards. It's a 10 card set, and they also come in a die cut format. They're officially cards. They do show up in the Beckett, but they're not cards that you usually run into. And they're cards you have to remember that they are magnetic, so you don't want it around flash drives and those and certain kinds of technology. But they're really unusual cards that fit into this same space of Olympic team cards that are hard to find. So for Flair, that's basically the cards that they made for the USA basketball teams. It was only 2 years long, nice cards, nothing really special. Skybox and Upper Deck almost got carried away with it. Flair just did something pretty basic, but they are nice. So what do you think? Do you think that this was a set that was underwhelming because they didn't really do anything with it? Do you like the simplicity that they had with it? Let me know in the comments below. I'm interested to see what discussions pop up as a result of this. As always, I hope you like this video. I hope you hit the like button. I hope that you'll subscribe and that you'll look forward to future videos that I make. Thank you very much for watching.